Bestselling author Michael Lewis is here to talk about his latest book on America's handling of the pandemic. That's where the Lost in the Woods part comes in. He's one of the country's best-known nonfiction writers, the author of 16 books overall. 3 of those books have been turned into Oscar-nominated movies. His most recent is The Premonition, a pandemic story. It explores why the U.S. struggled to respond to the coronavirus outbreak, even though it was thought to be the best prepared country in the world. Michael Lewis, good morning.
Morning.
So we had this great reputation. Everyone thought we'd be ready if no one else was, and yet we didn't respond as anyone expected.
Yeah.
How come?
No, it's an incredible story, actually. It's like a highly ranked college football team preseason coming in and just muffing it. And I don't think the country appreciates just how bad our response was. I mean, right through the pandemic, up to the vaccine being distributed, we had fewer than 5% of the people on the planet and more than 20% of the deaths. I mean, we're looking at 750,000 dead Americans right now. So why was it so bad? In the first place, we didn't really have a system to respond to. We had this thing called the Centers for Disease Control, which had evolved into something that was more like an academic institution. And what has to happen at the very beginning of the pandemic is you have to be on like a warlike footing, where someone at the center is actually directing and leading a unified response. And we never really got the unified response, right? We got this very divided take on what was going on.
So that divided take is actually what's most worrying now.
Oh, my God.
We may be in a worse position than we were because things have become politicized, and you can't just hose that off. That's now part of it.
So there is this fiction out there that you had a choice up front, lives or livelihood, right? You could let the thing run and you'd have your economy, or you could shut things down and people would suffer economically. When you look around the world at what's happened, that's a false choice. There's like a natural experiment that happened in the Nordic countries. Sweden let the thing run. Denmark and Norway, similar countries, shut things down.
Right.
Sweden has 5 times the death rate and more economic damage. So it was not either or. It was like you control this thing and you get more of your economy. But that's not the message that's out here. It's sort of like you pick a path and you're actually getting something on this other path, which you're not. You're 3 times more likely to die of COVID in Miami than you are in San Francisco.
Wow.
I mean, the death rate is 3 times as great. Why is that? And what I don't understand is why, you can see this now. It's information everybody can access, that there isn't an agreed upon truth here that we can act on, because instead there are 2 camps. So what happens the next time this happens, if it happens? You have instant polarization coming out of the chute because people have kind of dug in their heels.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems now, why I think we're maybe in a worse place.
Now, speaking of 2 camps, it seems like America is somewhat divided on being vaccinated, not being vaccinated. And there's still...
You think? You hear that?
Right.
He's careful. He's
That's
a careful journalist.
There is still a large number of individuals that are not vaccinated. And of course, individuals like Kyrie Irving, NBA's Kyrie Irving, is grabbing the headlines. But we're talking about men and women in the medical space, police officers, and firefighters. Why do you believe there are so many that still won't get vaccinated?
This country has an unbelievable ability to generate knowledge and then not use it. We created the pandemic strategy that other countries use to defend themselves, and now we've done it again with the vaccine. The short answer, there's not a short answer, right? Different groups have different reasons for being afraid of the vaccine, and I'm a little more sympathetic to Kyrie Irving than I am to some others. But the problem is that rather than us seeking for agreed upon truths, all this stuff has gotten tribalized. So that if you're in this group, you're hostile to the vaccine, and if you're in this group, you're supposed to get it. What it is not is evidence of. There's no evidence that the vaccine is really dangerous. In fact, just the opposite, right?
Yeah.
We have, hundreds of millions of people have been given this thing, and there's very little in the way of.
Right.
And on the other hand, 750,000 Americans. You just showed a story about a guy who's living with long-haul COVID. That's what's dangerous. So the fact that we are incapable of protecting our people or even saving ourselves, it speaks to something that's deeper in the culture.
Well,
and it was there before the pandemic.
Yeah.
In the 3 years running up to the pandemic, for the first time in a century, this country suffered a decline in life expectancy. And you kind of say, what's going on here?
Right.
We're basically failing as a country to take care of our people.
Yeah.
And this is just a continuation of
Yeah, 738,000 COVID-related deaths in this country. Since we last spoke to you, the number has gone up by more than 200,000. People struggle to comprehend that. It's a public tragedy still unfolding. Since we last spoke to you, you've also suffered a personal tragedy in your life. You and your wife, Tabitha, lost a child, 19-year-old Dixie. We were terribly sorry to hear that. First of all, how's your family doing? How are you doing? And I am curious, at a time when so many families are losing, did this loss, unrelated though it was, deepen your understanding of what the country's going through?
So thank you. We loved her as much as parents can love a child, and she was an incredible kid. It is a breathtaking blow, and when you have to deal with an actual loss, you feel it differently than if you just hear about someone else's loss.
Yeah.
And it's by turns paralyzing and exhausting and upsetting, but it has actually, it's made me wonder, like, I feel a numbness in the country. Yeah. Like, the country has not really come to terms with what has just happened. There's 750,000 families who've had this similar hole blown in their lives. And you kind of wonder just what that does to the energy of the country. I can tell you it has been rough on us, and it has made me appreciate that, like, anything you can do to minimize the likelihood of this happening to other people, you do. And it's why it's so upsetting that, like, as a society, we don't do it.
Yeah. Ooh, it's as you're speaking here, I'm just remembering we're all parents here, and so many families have lost children. So many children have lost parents, and I'm reminded of your book on fatherhood.
Yeah.
It's really taken my breath away.
She's a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
And with these numbers start to become just numbers. You think, you can go 700, what number does it take for us to wake up? Yeah. When it's a person, when it's a specific person, and you then multiply that in your head. So the characters in this book did. All the characters in my book are doctors. And they were the people who tried to set us up to succeed in this pandemic.
And you want them to be celebrated.
And I want them to be celebrated.
We have to leave it there. We want that success to happen. People need to read the book.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
The book is The Premonition. It is on sale now.